Hello, my name is Matthew Dewey, and in this episode of Writing Today, I'm going to be talking about military thrillers. Military thrillers are just a subgenre of thriller which focuses on a more military aspect of the story. It could be that the character is a soldier, or the character is investigating something that has to do with the military. Whatever the reasons to include these military elements is up to you as the author. But the elements that you do include will create a feeling that is unique to military thrillers. I myself, I am writing one such story and have experienced quite a few of them both in literature and in cinema. So I haven't covered this subject yet until I felt that I was more comfortable and experienced to talk about it. So in this video, I'm going to be covering some 5 basic tips when it comes to writing a military thriller, trying to avoid the cliche ones that you may be already familiar with, and get straight into some useful advice that you can use to establish an interesting and enjoyable military thriller story. The very first point I want to talk about is a deep dive into military structure and culture. When writing a thriller such as this, understanding the structure and culture of the military is crucial. This goes beyond just knowing the ranks. It means understanding the daily routines, the camaraderie, the discipline, even the unique jargon that is used in military life. And while this is sometimes captured in literature and in movies, the best source is to look at it in real life. So watch documentaries, read memoirs. There are plenty of interviews with veterans which you can even find here on YouTube. The reason this is important is because you want to create authenticity when it comes to a military thriller. Like with some thrillers out there, it is okay to use supernatural elements and to have a rudimentary understanding of them, because there isn't always an established thing when it comes to the supernatural. So these kinds of stories have given you the freedom to put your own twist on things. But when it comes to military thrillers, you have to appeal to an audience that may be well versed in military affairs. Your readers might be soldiers themselves, or family of soldiers, or simply people who have an interest in the culture of the military. So they have a deeper understanding of how it all works. So you need to as well, in order to make sure that your story comes off as authentic and believable. And as I said, this goes beyond understanding the ranks within the military or the different branches. It also helps to understand the mentality they might have, how they interact with each other. These kinds of things aren't covered so widely. So if you're especially inexperienced when it comes to military culture, I would recommend taking some time to get better acquainted with it before you even start plotting out a simple structure for your story. And as with most things that you approach when it comes to research, approach it with respect and consideration to the kinds of characters and people you are representing in your story. The next point I want to talk about is realistic depictions of technology and weaponry. While it's tempting to add your own flashy technology and over-the-top weaponry, realism is key in a military thriller. Being grounded and believable makes the thriller aspect that much more enjoyable and gripping. So take the time as well to research the weapons and technology that are actually used in the field. For example, if you're following military affairs both foreign and domestic, you'll notice that different protocols are used, different tactics, different weaponry, different gadgets and technology. There's not only a hierarchy between the people, but there's certainly a different toolset used for different situations. And be sure to understand the limitations of this technology. Is it easily accessible? Do most people have it? If it's something that's rare and rarely used, then perhaps don't mention it so often in your story unless it's particularly focused on that part of military culture. And there's one very important point I'd like to bring up when talking about this subject, and that's that not only is weaponry and technology limited, but sometimes it doesn't always work correctly. For example, a gun does jam. Depending on its brand and make, it may jam more often than not. There's also some issues when it comes to technology. Sometimes they are limited by the terrain, the access to structures that have been set up in order to make it work. And of course, there's also some ways to circumnavigate said technology. And it's great to know these things, especially when you're plotting a story, because you might come up with unique ways to tell your story. There are so many events that can transpire when something works well and when it doesn't. So not only will this research help you create a more authentic experience for your readers, but it'll also go a long way in helping you craft a unique and interesting story. Tip number 3 concerns the characters themselves. In military thrillers, it's easy to focus on the action and forget about the characters. But what makes a story truly memorable is its characters. So avoid the one-dimensional heroes and villains. Instead, try to create complex characters with their own motivations, fears, and flaws. Something that I'm sure you've been bored to death hearing from me when it comes to almost every genre, but it's truly important. There are several reasons why these characters need to have personality in order to make them captivating. Many of the greatest stories reflected the human side of soldiers and anybody who's been put in a traumatic experience involving the military. There is psychological harm that comes with the physical harm that is also inflicted in wartime. Trust issues develop not only between the military and the people that they may be surrounded with, but also the people in the military, based on bad experiences. Trust and fear are something that plays hand in hand with each other when these elements are interacting. So in better understanding how complex humans are and how a bad experience can make them act a certain way, could certainly help you establish a feeling that is often present in military thrillers. So approach the subject matter with the delicacy and forethought to create characters who aren't perfectly hardened to everything around them. That damage is very real and recognizable by soldiers and those familiar with the military. Now, point number 4 is taking a closer look at the strategies and tactics that are often employed by the military. Now, tactical realism is the cornerstone of any good military thriller. There's always an approach, a plan in mind. Typically, these are protocols that have been trained into soldiers, how they should act when placed in a certain situation. So taking the time to study some real-life military strategies also goes a long way in establishing authenticity. Understand how different branches of the military might approach a situation, how they operate and how they coordinate their missions. Once more, this goes a long way towards believability, but as writers, it's very important to understand this because when you are writing fight scenes, you want to establish all the pieces that are on the board and how they move. And when it comes to writing fight scenes, there is an art form to it. So in understanding military strategies, you're basically given the blueprint of how a fight scene should transpire. So for those writers out there who like to make sure their fight scenes are clear and effective, or those who struggle to write fight scenes, understanding military tactics and strategy, very important. Now, point number 5 I want to talk about is also the political aspects of your military thriller. Often when it comes to military thrillers, whether it be following a soldier in a domestic situation or a soldier overseas, you need to understand how politics is at play. How are these soldiers treated in both areas? How are they treated not only by the people around them, but also how they are treated by the people who lead them. Now, this is a rather messy thing to talk about, and that's why it's not so often talked about in military thrillers. Often when it is mentioned with a level of disdain, because soldiers themselves are often put in situations that are incredibly dangerous and cost them their lives, usually due to bad leadership. Once more, it's that level of trust and fear that makes the situation so realistic and understandable by even those who aren't familiar with military culture. So if you want to base your military thriller in reality, it also helps to understand the political interactions between different countries, or even different branches of the military. And of course, if you want to do what most military thrillers do and make one of the antagonists a part of upper government, then it's perhaps a good idea to understand the politics of the situation in order to make that government type that much more unlikable but believable. And there you have it. 5 key points that once you better understand them, you'll have an easier time writing your military thriller. Of course, I'm not the greatest expert when it comes to writing military thrillers. Some great examples, of course, being Tom Clancy himself, who's famous for writing realistic military thrillers that many people have enjoyed, including myself. If you're familiar with military thriller stories and have a few points that you want to share in the comments below, please do. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. With that, thank you for watching and happy writing.